Hi everybody, my name is Jin Ben and welcome to iHome Church. This week I would like to share a wonderful story that I heard a while back that really moved me. And it's a story about the miracle of simple things. This is a story about a woman named Reba Smith, and she is the grandmother of this young lady, or a young child I should say, whose name was Susie. And Susie, after growing up and having fulfilled her life goal of doing many wonderful things, was sharing with many of the people that loved her about the memory of her grandmother. And she tells a tale of how her grandmother really inspired her to grow up to be a woman that wanted to serve others, that wanted to really love others, that wanted to kind of go the extra mile in investing in others. And she says that when she was around 4 or 5 years old, she would just look forward every morning for the school bus to pick up her siblings and herself, not so that the school bus will take her to school, but she would ride along together with her siblings, and the bus driver would always drive her the extra distance and drop her off at her grandma's house, and that was where she was going to spend the lovely day. And when it was time for the school children to go back home, the school bus driver would swing by and take Susie back home. And she says she looked forward to being dropped off at her grandma's house every day. And why does she look forward to being dropped off at her grandma's house? She says that no matter what her grandmother might be doing at that moment when the school bus dropped her off, she might be in the middle of cleaning, she might be in the middle of weeding her garden, she might be in the middle of taking care of her chickens and gathering eggs. But knowing what time she would arrive, her grandmother would take the time and the effort to make her an authentic hot chocolate. Not one of those hot chocolate that comes in bottles pre-packaged, but she would go through the process of preparing the best milk that she can find from her little farm, and taking the time to make real chocolate, to melt the chocolate, and create this wonderful brothy beverage that waited for her every morning. And she says many times when she went straight into the kitchen expecting exactly that, a lovely mug of hot chocolate, many times the grandmother was not even there. But she could hear her grandmother all the way in the barn. And her grandmother had this way of sneezing when something got in her nose, and she could hear that grandmother was gathering eggs, and then the grandmother also hearing that somebody rushed into the house. There would be kind of like this this anticipation of the grandma seeing the granddaughter, and the granddaughter seeing her grandmother come into the kitchen to watch her enjoy her hot chocolate. And she said that it was this small gesture that her grandmother did every day that made her realize that she was the most important thing, or that person in her grandma's life. She felt like she was the queen of this little domain called Grandma's house, and Grandma was there to take care of her, to talk to her, to embrace her, to encourage her, no matter what she was doing. So she would take Susie through the process of churning milk into butter. But all the while she would be doing her work. She would be talking to Susie, inspiring her and listening to her and encouraging her. And she said, I was not one of those children that looked forward to going to church on Sundays. But the reason why I went was I just loved to hear my grandmother sing together with my grandpa. And sometimes the two of them would break out into a duet. And she said, I just waited for that moment. And so she grew up with these incredible warm memories that touched and nurtured and inspired her heart. And she realized that the most meaningful things that she remembers in her childhood are these talks, are these wonderful moments where she would hear her grandparents break out into a duet at church, and this incredible hot chocolate that was prepared for her, with care and with effort and with investment. And she said, these may seem like insignificant things because grandmother didn't have much. She was dirt poor, as we all were, says Susie. We didn't have money. Grandmother didn't have money to take Susie on lavish vacations to Disney World or to Disneyland. And, she was not able to get incredible and exciting toys from Toys R Us in those days. But what she received from her grandmother in these little small packages of love, she remembers as the simple things in life that really moved her to actually seek a relationship with God and actually want to be that person, just like her grandmother, to be proactive and reach out to people and inspire people, give to people, and support people. And later, Susie went on to grow up into a fine young woman, and she herself had a beautiful singing voice, and her sister also had a great singing voice, and her sister would go on to become a huge country singer, Reba McEntire. But Susie grew up to be a minister, and she decided that she was going to minister or administer the gospel to a group of people that other ministers didn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. And these were what she calls the roughneck, really hard-drinking rodeo cowboys. But she decided, well, if other pastors and ministers are not going to administer the gospel to them or take care of them, I am going to do that. So she took it upon herself, she herself being a fabulous singer, to organize these concerts and devotionals at these rodeos that became a huge hit. And she ended up touching the lives of thousands and thousands of people over the years. And when people asked her, what is the most important thing in your life that really inspired you to want to administer to these untouchables, these roughneck rodeo cowboys, and create what became known as Cowboy Churches, she would answer, it's the simple things that my grandma did over time, slow and easy, on a consistent basis. Hot chocolate every day. It's that little thing. It's that little, moment where she waited for her grandparents to break out into a duet. And it's all these lovely memories that wanted her, that made her want to be the person that she is. And, when I heard about her story, about simple things, she inspired me so much because, as you know, when we shared the midnight prayer that Father gave in 1981, he gave the motto for the year as home church is the kingdom of heaven. And, true fathers tends to always be ahead of his time. So even though he gave this message in the 80s, a lot of us didn't really fully grasp what he meant by it and why this home church given to this land of America, what was it about this country, or the American spirit, that really inspired Father to say, hey, you strong American brothers and you beautiful American sisters, go and be your own tribal messiahs. You can change the world. What strange imagination was the reason for my father saying these things more than 30 years ago? Well, I think he could tap into or sense the American spirit that sociologist Claude Fisher talks about in his book, Made in America. And he talks about the singular character that really distinguishes the American spirit from other and myriads of other different cultures. He says that Americans have this belief, and they behave accordingly to their belief. Belief in the individual, belief in an independent person, belief in one's sovereignty, one's self-responsibility. But that belief is also partnered together with the belief that success in life comes through fellowship or through volunteer communities. And he says the great thing about the American spirit that really makes America what it is, one of the great superpowers, and contrary to so many myths about America getting worse and worse and worse, he says, actually, when you study the statistics and not just regurgitate the myths about America, America is actually getting better. Life is much better than 100 years ago. And contrary to lots of people saying that, God is dead in America, people are losing their faith and their religiosity, he said, actually, God is more alive in America than ever before. And people are searching for an understanding of their life. People are searching for this incredible spirit that they can tap into. So when Father talks about, the importance of home church, and these speeches were given, at the New Yorker, in the prepared location of New York City, in this great country of America, I believe that Father was talking about these things and wanted really American brothers and sisters to get excited about it, because he understood this volunteer spirit of the American people. And what I love about Susie's story about, she basically became the founder of Cowboy Churches. Well, she became that tribal messiah. And the Cowboy Churches became her home church, in that this was what she decided was going to be her home. And she was going to administer to these rowdy, drunken and, sometimes violent rodeo cowboys, and administer the gospel to them, because everybody deserves to hear the gospel, don't you think? And her efforts, through her creativity and her ability to sing beautifully, moved the hearts of thousands and thousands of people. And so when I think about Susie, it really kind of reminds me of 1 Chronicle chapter 29, verse 9. There it talks about how God delights in people that gives freely, willingly, and cheerfully. It says, the people rejoiced because these had given willingly, with a whole and a blameless heart. A heart that is not full of blame, but it's so filled with gratitude. It's cheerful. They had offered freely to the Lord. They were not offering out of compunction or out of compulsion, but they were doing so because they were so moved through the spirit of volunteerism. And when I read this passage, it reminds me of Reba Smith, the grandma of Susie, who gave to her grandchild freely, cheerfully, and willingly. These simple things that really, catapulted the heart of her granddaughter to do incredible things, to want to love people because she was loved. She wanted to be proactive and give something, give some joy to the world. She found incredible value in the words of Jesus Christ and in her relationship with God. So she was not going to enjoy this mug of hot chocolate by herself, but she was going to take her mug of hot chocolate, her newfound relationship with God and her belief in Jesus Christ, and share it with the rowdy guys, the rodeo cowboys. And how wonderful in that these people, they responded to her willingly, cheerfully, and freely. In that they were moved by her concerts. They were moved by the devotionals. They were moved by her prayer. And it really reminds me of the quote that my father shared in July 1871. He said, "Heaven," and here we are, starting the year talking about how home church is the kingdom of heaven. He says, "Heaven begins from the heart that overcomes the world." What he means by that is what we want. We want this kingdom of heaven. And many times we go about our lives, seeking it far away. But Father says, many times the heaven is all around us. He says, although heaven may exist all around us, if our own mind is evil or blind, we cannot perceive it, be harmonized by it, and it would be meaningless to us. Therefore, the basis of receiving the kingdom of heaven is not the environment, but I, myself. The pillar of maintaining the kingdom of heaven is not my circumstances, but my own heart. It is our hearts deciding to live a life as if we have heaven in our hearts that starts this incredible change within ourselves and with all the people that come in contact with us. So, regardless of where Susie was, she wasn't thinking, oh my goodness, here I am with a bunch of rodeo cowboys, what am I doing? She said, rodeo cowboys? Nobody wants to administer the gospel to them? Well, they are going to be my heaven. They are going to be my home church. They are going to be the people I administer to. And so instead of looking elsewhere for heaven or expecting her environment, or others to create a beautiful environment for her, it started with Susie. It started with herself. It started with her heart saying, I am going to create heaven that overcomes the world, that influences the world. It's like a ripple getting stronger and wider as it moves out into the world, because that's the power of true love. The more you give, the more it comes back, and the more you give, the more it grows, it expands. It's like this incredible dynamic relationship with the world. And before you know it, you're changing people's lives. You're inspiring people's lives. You're connecting people to God. You're connecting people to the words of Jesus Christ. You're connecting people to the words of Reverend Sun Myung Moon. So this is truly the beauty of iHome Church. So we realize that, the miracle of the simple things that the grandma gave to Susie is that those simple acts or expressions of love touched Susie's heart. And it's that heart that decided to make the Cowboy Churches her heaven, her home church, and thereby become a light onto the world. So here we are at the beginning of the year. And here we are, thinking about what are we going to do with this year so that we are not just living inspired and empowered life, but we are also connecting our life to something much larger because we belong to one family of God. Well, the incredible thing about the message of iHome Church is the American spirit of volunteerism. Father is asking us to be proactive. Don't just sit. We can volunteer and make the world a better place. We can invest wholeheartedly, willingly, freely, without being told to do so. So when you look at the example of Reba Smith, the grandmother of Susie, she wasn't loving Susie because she wanted to be an emotional giver. An emotional giver is somebody who gives when you make me feel good. And Reba wasn't giving to Susie because she was a conditional giver, which is basically, I will give you love, Susie, if you do what I want you to. And Reba wasn't giving to Susie because she was an institutional giver. In other words, I give because I must. She didn't have to give because she must. She didn't have to give because you did such and such for me. She didn't have to give because Susie made her feel good. She gave just because. Just because. She loved Susie as that beautiful granddaughter, and she saw something in Susie that she knew would be great in terms of affecting and inspiring the lives of thousands of people in the future. So this is the beauty of loving somebody willingly, cheerfully, freely. And isn't that what we as parents, for those of us who have kids, isn't that what we want in terms of our relationship with our kids, or our relationship with our loved one, or our relationship with our spouse? My goodness, I want a spouse or a husband that loves me willingly, freely, cheerfully. I don't want him to love me as an emotional giver. I don't want him to love me just because I make him feel good, although that's a nice thing too. Or I don't want him to love me just because, it's being a conditional giver, because maybe I do something that he wants me to do and therefore he loves me. Or he doesn't love me because, he's an institutional lover, and that this is the institution of marriage and therefore you must love me. He doesn't want that. He doesn't want a feeling like I love him because I have to, because the institution of marriage says so. He wants me to love him because I do. And, he would love it if I do incredible things or simple gestures of love, or share the simple things, meaningful things in our life, just because. Not because I'm expecting anything, not because I make him feel good, not because I have to, but just because I love him. And isn't that the greatest thing in life? My father, the Reverend Samuel, often says, we were born to love and to be loved. That is the greatest thing in life. And if we don't experience that in our life, he says, that's a sad person. But when we can experience it in our lives, it's like nothing else. And so when I think about my husband, I love him for the simple things that he does, that it's just almost like habit to him. He does things without thinking. Like, for instance, I saw this coffee cup that says, we follow the Bible, because in the morning, my husband, he brews. And in our household, my husband does make the better cup of coffee, so he brews. But every time he makes coffee, he brews coffee in the course of the day, from morning to night, depending on what we're doing. He just, out of his heart, he always brews me a cup. So regardless of what I'm doing, sometimes I'm in the bathroom and nature calls. But that happened to be the time that he brewed that coffee. And so here he comes when I want a little time alone in the bathroom, but he brewed me a cup of coffee and he wants to give it to me. And it always makes me laugh, but at the same time, I say, golly geez, I love this man. And it's these simple things that just moves me each and every day. And then so I'm constantly asking myself, what are some of the simple things that I can do just to let him know that I love him, just because. So at the beginning of this year, when we're thinking about home church, when we're thinking about being proactive, tapping into that American spirit of true volunteerism, of being part of this incredible community of volunteerists wanting to do good for the world, we can ask ourselves, what are some of the simple things that we can do for our loved ones? What are some of the simple things that we can do to our mom and dad, or to my husband or wife, or to our children, or to our best friends, just to let them know that we love them? So I want you to think about some of the most incredible, simple things that you can share with your loved ones in the coming week, because I know that that's what I will be doing. And yes, my husband is a lucky man, because I will be sharing with him a lot of simple things. But the more creative you are, the better. So please have a great week, and God bless. For those of you who have questions and comments, please leave them below the video or go to enginemoon.com and use the contact form. And don't forget to subscribe to our email list. And for those of you who would like to contribute to our work here at our home church, just click on the donate button. Thank you. God bless.